So if I open my file called operators.csv and I try to zoom out a bit, so my operators is going to look like this. I can choose to select here and try to increase the cell. My first number, which is x here, I'm going to rename this as x. I'm going to rename this cell as x, define a new name, and I'm going to call it x. Then I'm going to also define a new name for this one and call it y.
Okay.
Then I'm going to enter a number here, let's say 2, and I'll enter a number like 5 here. Okay. Then here they are saying sum of x and y. We put the sum of x and y here. So how do we find out the sum of x and y? Sum is equivalent to equals, you can use the formula for finding sum, which is x plus y. Why am I seeing x plus y here? I renamed my cells and I defined new names for my cells and called them x and y. And when you add 2 plus 5, you're going to get 7. Okay? The difference between x and y is subtract x from y. And I'll say difference between x equals x, okay, minus y, and of course I can press enter and you'll see when you subtract 2 from 5 you get a negative 5. When you look for the product of x and y, we can choose to say equals a2. I can also choose to use maybe a1, okay, my a1 times a2. You can see it's going to give us the right thing. 2 times 5 is equivalent to 10. So whichever method or whichever operation you want to use is always okay. Division, we can also choose to divide x by y. So I'll say equals here and say maybe x divided by y. Press enter and you get 0.4. Basically, that is that. Then we can also choose to say x to power y. So x is 2, or we say x, we need to put our equal signs first, of course. You say equals x, and to the power, we can always use the shift and the 6. That is the symbol for power, okay? Shift and the 6, then press enter, so you get 32. 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, 8 times 2 is 16, and 16 times 2 is 32. So that is why we have 32 here. That is 2 to the power 5. Editing our worksheet to look very nice or look the way we want it to appear. In case we have maybe a worksheet of this case and you can see this work does not have a heading, it's having some sections. Some work, of course, you can see some bits of work are covered, some words are not, you are not able to see some words because they are either too long, okay? Then what do we do? So briefly, how to insert a new row or a new column in a worksheet or in a spreadsheet. All you need to do for a new row, in case you want to insert a heading for this, I'm just going to call to get my cursor over number 1, and the cursor will automatically change. Pointer will automatically change its appearance, and I'll left click once and right click, then I'll go down to insert and I'll insert a new row above. So I can choose to select only the active part of our worksheet here and the merge and center, and I'll call this my item my item list. Okay, I can choose to change the font type here. Just click into the cell and change the font type to stencil. I can choose to increase the size to maybe 20. Okay, change the color here to a blue, like a water blue. Let me use that blue. I can even add a highlight color. Yeah, basically like that. And maybe I've forgotten to add a country between USA and the UK. I want to add Uganda here. I select my column C just by putting my cursor over C and I left click. The entire column will be selected downwards like you can see. Then I'll right click there and insert. A new row will appear between USA and UK. So after inserting my new row like this, I'll come and type maybe Uganda here, UG. Then I'll also put UG here, UG. Of course, Uganda we use shillings. Okay, so I'll use shillings here. Then you can see these some names here are too long and do not fit in the cells. Okay, so some words have been cut off. They are not easily, or they are not vividly seen. Like you can see, the word here is not, it is supposed to be sprinkler gun. Okay, 5 centimeter hose reel. This is 7.5 centimeter hose reel. This is 10 centimeter hose reel. Because of the size of the cell, some words are not able to be seen in the cell. So what do we do? All you need to do is just click anywhere in the cell. You come and put your cursor just in between cell A and B, in between column A and B, and you drag. You can either drag to the left to reduce the size or drag to the right and increase the size of your cell, just like that, so that you have all your words here being vividly seen or clearly seen. Then in this case where you have Europe, Japan, Austria, UK, UG, USA, some cells are too big and yet the content is literally small, so you can reduce. Put the cursor in between G and H because you want to reduce the size here, and you will be able to reduce like that. Alternatively, just get your cursor at the top left of the worksheet. There is always a triangle here. Just click at that triangle once, it will select the entire worksheet, and you double click anywhere in between two columns. Just double click on any line in between two columns and it will reduce or resize the columns to fit the words inside them, like you can see now. The size of USA has reduced to fit dollars in. The size of shillings has greatly reduced. The pounds have greatly reduced. Dollars, Austria has reduced. Japan and Europe, like that. But when you put in maybe Uganda shillings, let's try to calculate the exchange rate of a dollar. A USA dollar is maybe 4,000 Uganda shillings. Okay. If we try to calculate here 4,000, you see the cell is already increasing automatically. The cell is trying to increase. So if someone has 28 USA dollars, how many Uganda shillings would that person be having? I think we need to carry out a multiplication here. So all you need to do is come into the cell here, put your equal sign here, and you're going to multiply 4,000, that is the cell C4, multiplied by cell B9. Okay, C4 multiplied by cell B9, and you can press enter. So that will be about 112,000 shillings. But because we are working with shillings or currencies, we need to put commas to separate our work. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to select this work here. I'm going to select this piece of information here, and I'll come to home, and I want to add comma separators. Okay, I'm going to add comma separators, and when you add comma separators, they will always separate to the nearest thousands. Okay, we can also choose to add decimal places or remove decimal places. We can also choose to add maybe decimal places to our worksheet, highlight like this, and increase decimal places to 2. I can decide to reduce them to 2, like that. Okay, so if we want to carry out this transaction, how many Uganda shillings make up 12 USA dollars? We're going to be multiplying this cell here by a value that is appearing in the cells downwards here. Okay, like the cost price for these horse reels varies from measurement. So, but the exchange rate does not vary. So we need to make this cell absolute so that we can just multiply it downwards using the same cell. So how do we make a cell absolute? Simply just remove, let's just undo this. Okay, I put my equal sign here, and I want to multiply this cell. Again, I'm going to multiply it by by B9. Okay, but we want to make this cell here absolute. All you need to do is select that cell and press F4 on the keyboard. F4, the button that has F4 on the keyboard, to put dollar symbols between the C and 4. Okay, then this means we've made this cell here absolute, and we can be able to drag downwards. As we drag downwards, this formula is going to be carried on downwards, but the cell here is not going to be changing. We shall be referring to this cell here. It will not be changing. So we select this and press F4 on the keyboard. Alternatively, you just click in this cell here, click at the beginning and you add a dollar symbol there, click between C and 4 and you add a dollar symbol there, and you can press enter. You get the same answer and you can drag downwards. You see what happens. But if we have not made this cell absolute, if we do not make this cell absolute in our formula here, let me show you what will happen. You're going to choose, maybe you're going to say it is this. I'm going to remove this and say equals. We are multiplying this, multiplied by B9. I put the B9 and press enter. If I fill up the spaces here by just clicking here, it's going to give us a hash value. And when we double click here, you'll see that it is now multiplying this blank space here multiplied by 12. You see, it's multiplying this blank space here by 12 because the cell is not absolute. When you try to fill up downwards, the cell will keep moving to the next cell below. So this is the reason for making a cell absolute. And the best way to do this is you come back here and press F5, F4 on the keyboard. You press function 4 button and you can now fill up and your answer will be correct. So briefly, that is that to do with the basics of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and of course referencing a cell or editing a cell to appear in the best way you want it to. How to use functions instead of formulas or formulae. We have some functions that can be used instead of maybe adding up values. We can decide to use functions. For example, we need to increase the size of this cell. So we have names of workers, maybe names of workers, okay, names of workers, and the days they work per week, or days they work per month, okay. So you can see Pauline works for 4 days, Duncan 11, Aminat 1, Udoka works for about 5 days a week, and then they can ask you to calculate or find the total number of days worked by the total number of days worked by all the employees in the company, maybe in the shop, like the total number of days all the employees work in maybe a month, okay. So we can just use a function. We can still use, maybe we can choose to add, okay. You can choose to go through the longest procedure, the longest method of adding up B3 plus B4 plus B5 plus B6 plus B7 plus B8 plus B9 plus B10 plus B12 and B11 as well, of course. So you can choose to add them that way, but the simplest way is, of course, using a function, and that function is called summation, or the sum function. Basically, it runs like equals, you write SUM for sum, open your brackets, and you're going to say sum of B3, you're going to put a full colony to signify B3 to which number? B12. So we are adding up all the values between B3 and B12. That is literally the meaning of this expression here. Another person can choose to say, you get 70. Another person can choose to say equals SUM, open brackets, and you say this, comma, this, comma, this, comma, this, comma, this, comma, this, the cell address, comma, cell address, comma, cell address, comma, like this. Okay, close the bracket, and you're going to get the right answer as well. But this is the simplest method. Then they can also ask you to find the average number of days worked. For example, in mathematics, average is calculated by adding all of these, then you divide by the number of workers. Maybe we have 1, 2, 3, 10 workers. So when you get the total here, and you're going to divide it by 10 workers. But because spreadsheets are here to help us, we are going to use a function, and that function is called the average function. So you say equals, and you write the function. The function name is average. Average, like that. Open brackets, and you're going to say average of B3 to, you put a full colony, B3 to B12. Okay, then you can close your bracket. Alternatively, the same thing can happen like we did here. I can choose to do this, and instead of course, saying sum, I'm going to use average of B3, okay, it is 7, the average of B3 to average of B3, B4, B5, B6, B up to B13 is, oh sorry, B13 is not supposed to be part of this. So average is 12, something of that kind. Then we can also be asked to find the maximum number of days worked, like the maximum number. The person who worked for the most number of days, person who worked for the most number of days, and of course we use the maximum function, or the max function, and which runs like equals AX, open your brackets, and you're going to put the same cell range This is what we refer to as a range of cells. Full colony up to there, B3. So B3 to B12 is a range of cells. Alternatively, we can decide to name this range of cells. Okay, I select the cells that I want to rename or define a new name for these cells here. I'll right click in the selection here and define a new name, and I'm going to give this cell I'm going to name this range of cells days worked, and I'll say okay. So the days worked are absolutely referenced as B3 to B12. Those are the days that are worked for in a week. So if I want to find out the number of days, maybe the maximum number, the person who worked for the highest number of days in this month, maybe I'll just say equals and say max. Instead of writing the range of cells, I'm going to write the name that I gave to my range here, and that is the days. Is it days? Days worked. This is the name we gave to our range. Days underscore, I double click here, days worked, and you'll see it's being selected here. Then you can press enter and you get the right. Then the next thing can be finding the least number of days worked for the person who worked for the least number of days. Okay, so we can also find the least number of days that anybody worked for in this month, and the simplest way is just saying equals. Of course, we use the mean function, or the minimum function, mean, and open brackets, and we write our range. Our range was called days, or days underscore worked. Okay, that is the range. That is the range of cells that we named. And when you press enter, you're going to have the least number of days worked in a week, where 1, and the highest number of days. The person who worked for the highest number of days worked for 22 days, something of that kind. Sometimes average is also referred to as mean. So when they ask you for the mean, always just know they are looking for the average. In case they ask you for the mean of days worked for, maybe, just know they are looking for the average. So you just say equals and you write the function, which is average. Okay, open your brackets, and we shall call our range days worked. Close the bracket here and press enter. Briefly, like that. They can also ask you to find the model number, the mode or most common number that is appearing, the model number. The number of days that most workers worked for. If they are, or we are looking for the number that is most repeated. So all you need to do is come here, and we're going to use the mode function, equals, you write MODE, open brackets, and we write our range of cells here. I can just drag through, and when you drag through, the name will always be written down here that we gave to our range. And it's for the most common number here is 4. You see 4 is appearing once, 4 twice, and 4 thrice. We can also choose to maybe say each worker, if every worker works for 4 days, each day is paid maybe $12.80. Rate of payment, let's call this rate of payment. And maybe the rate of payment for each day is 12.80. Then the amount of money that each employee is going to be paid. 0 doesn't display, but we can choose to say to 2 decimal places. Highlight this, and I'm going to ensure that it is displayed to 2 decimal places. Okay, so if you request for 2 decimal places, the 80 will appear, and we're going to multiply this by this. So we need to we therefore need to make this cell here absolute and multiply it throughout all our range here. And we are going to simply find the pay for each employee at maybe the end of month, if you're paid according to the number of days that you worked for, and each day is rated at 12.80 maybe dollars. We can choose to add a currency symbol here just by getting to accounting symbols here, and you choose maybe you can choose English United States dollar, or I highlighted a different part. I should highlight here, okay, and select where you want to apply the currency symbol. Then you get to home, and under number you have currency symbols here, you have percentage symbols and the commas. So I can choose to put commas, I can choose to put decimal places, and can choose to put currency symbols like dollars. Okay, so in case the currency symbol that you want is not stated here, you can always go to more accounting symbols and you'll get to a different window where you look for a particular accounting symbol, and you can always look for, of course we want a currency, then you can look for maybe shillings that are Uganda shillings. So it will be Uganda shillings of that kind. Okay, so let's use dollars for this case, just for the sake. We can use dollars, and of course we say we're going to make this absolute, so we shall of course use multiplication, and we are going to say equals, we are multiplying this rate here times this value here, the value, the number of days that are worked for by a particular employee. Remember we said making a cell absolute or making a cell address absolute, just select a cell and press function 4 button on the keyboard and it will be made absolute. We can therefore press enter and we can drag downwards or fill this in, and this will be our final product or our final answer. Okay, another person can ask you to maybe round off using a function. They can ask you to round off to the nearest hundreds. So we can choose maybe to round off Brianna's earning to the nearest whole number. When you ask to round off, you can always use the round function. So it runs like equals round, okay, then open bracket. Then you should specify the cell address of the value that you want to round off, and this is the cell address, which is followed by a comma or separated with a comma, and the next thing is supposed to be round off to how many decimal places. I can choose to round off to 0 decimal places, and I close my bracket and press enter. So it's going to have it's supposed to display something of that kind. Or we can choose to round off Milana's salary to the nearest whole number. Okay, so what you need to do is click in the cell that you click anywhere that you want to apply your formula, and you put the equal sign there. Then of course we can write the function for rounding off, which is round, R-O-U-N-D, open the brackets, and the next thing is supposed to be the cell address of that cell that is containing the data that you want to round off, which is followed by a comma and is followed by the number of place values after the decimal place. So if you want to round off to 0 decimal places, then you just put a 0 and you can close the bracket there and press enter. So you'll have of course the value will be rounded off to the nearest whole number. Normally it was 281, and currently if you round off it will be 282 USA dollars. Okay, something of that kind. So that is what we do in case you have been asked to round off. You can also choose to round off to maybe 2 decimal places, and I'm going to just change this. Instead of writing the 0 here, if they ask you to round off to 2 decimal places, just put there a 2 and press enter. So you have the 6.0 back. Lastly for today, I'm going to look at the count function and the counter function. The count function basically counts the number of values or the number of cells containing integer values, whereas the counter function will count all the number of cells that are selected, including those that have text in them. So when we count, maybe I want to count the cells that are in this range from A1 to C12. How many cells are in A1, in the range A1 to A12? I'm going to put my count function here, and I'll say equals. The count function is just the word count, open the bracket, and you write the range from A1 to C12, and you'll see the range will be selected, and you can close your bracket here and press enter, and you'll see 21 cells are counted. But if we try to count, you're going to see the number of cells here that are having text are not looked at. The count function only looks for those cells containing integer values. What if we use the counter function? This is the count function. What if we use the counter function? This one is short for count all. This one will count all the cells that have a writing in them, whether it is text or numeric. So we can use the same formula, that is the same function is, we're going to use the counter function and use the same range, and that will be equals counter, count A, open brackets, and we are counting from A1 to C12. Then you can see we shall have 35 cells. Why is there a difference in the count and the count A? The only difference that you will see is in the count we are only looking at these cells that contain only integer values, whereas for the counter it looks at all these cells that are in this selection and contain a writing. What if we included the row 13? What if we included row 13 up to, so we change our range here to the counter, and it should be up to C13. Change to C13 like this. But yeah, C13, it's going to add this 1, 2, 3. So it's going to add only 1 because these 2 are blank. Let's put our, we close the bracket there, and you see it's now 36. Why is it adding only 1? Because these 2 are blank. If we put any text here, let me say I write A here and write 1 here, it's going to increase to 38, and it increases to 37, and if I click out here it's going to increase to 38 because put values in these cells here. If I remove the values here, it's going back to 36. I remove this word count from here, it's going to go back to 35. Okay, so the count A function will count all those cells that contain a value in them, whether it is numeric or text, whereas the count function will only look at those values or those cells that have a writing that is in numeric in them. So I want to end here for today, and thank you for watching my videos. Kindly subscribe for more videos are coming in anytime soon.